The night she came back, she didn't look guilty. She looked relieved, and somehow that felt worse. Ethan Caldwell stood in the doorway of their home in Greenwich, watching his wife walk in like she had just returned from a quiet retreat, not 2 weeks away with the man she once loved before him. Claire Caldwell placed her suitcase down gently, as if the house might reject her if she made too much noise. She didn't rush toward him. She didn't hesitate either. "I needed closure," she said, her voice steady, almost rehearsed. Ethan nodded, not because he agreed, but because he understood that anything else would open a door he wasn't ready to walk through. He stepped aside and let her in. That was the moment something shifted between them, though neither of them said it out loud. Their marriage had always been built on control. Not the obvious kind, not loud arguments or ultimatums, but quiet control, measured words, careful reactions, the kind that made everything look stable from the outside. Ethan was a partner at a financial firm in Stanford, a man who solved problems by reducing them to numbers. Claire was a brand strategist, someone who understood perception better than reality. Together, they had built a life that looked perfect, a house that reflected taste without excess, a social circle that respected boundaries without asking questions. But now, something had entered that structure that could not be measured or rebranded. Something unpredictable, something human. That first night, they sat across from each other at the dining table. Neither of them touched the food. Claire spoke first. "It wasn't what you think," she said. Ethan didn't ask what he was supposed to think. He didn't ask for details. He didn't even ask her if she had been faithful. Instead, he asked something else. "Do you feel different?" Claire blinked, not because the question was unexpected, but because it was precise. "Yes," she said after a moment. Ethan nodded again, and that was the end of the conversation. For now, the days that followed felt almost normal. Claire resumed her routines. Morning coffee in the kitchen, calls with clients from her home office, evening walks through the neighborhood. But Ethan noticed the difference. Not in what she did, but in how she existed. There was a looseness to her, a quiet absence of tension that had always been there before, like she had been carrying something heavy for years and finally set it down. And that realization did something unsettling to him, because if she had found relief, it meant something in their marriage had been a burden. Ethan didn't confront her, not immediately. He watched instead, observed patterns, measured inconsistencies. He checked small things, her phone placement, her schedule shifts, her tone during conversations. There was no evidence of anything ongoing, no messages, no hidden calls, no sudden distractions. If anything, she seemed more present than before, more engaged, more available, and that confused him more than anything else, because guilt creates distance. But Claire was moving closer. One evening, about 10 days after her return, they attended a dinner at the Harringtons' estate. Sloane Harrington greeted them with her usual composed warmth, unaware that anything had changed. The room was filled with familiar faces. Conversations about markets, travel, and upcoming events flowed effortlessly. Claire fit back into the environment perfectly, laughing at the right moments, engaging without hesitation. Ethan watched her from across the room, not with suspicion, but with a growing awareness that he didn't fully understand the woman he had married. At one point, Claire caught his gaze, held it for a second longer than usual, then smiled. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't apologetic. It was calm, and that calmness unsettled him more than anger ever could. On the drive home, the silence stretched longer than usual. Ethan finally broke it. "Was it worth it?" Claire didn't ask what he meant. "Yes," she said softly. Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. That answer carried weight, not because of what it revealed, but because of what it didn't. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't offering justification. She was stating a fact, and in doing so, she was forcing him to confront something he had been avoiding. "Before we go further, tell me honestly, what would you have done in Ethan's position at that moment? Would you have pressed for details, or stayed silent like you did?" Because silence can protect a relationship, but it can also slowly erase it. The shift came 3 weeks later, not through an argument, not through a confession, but through something far more subtle. Ethan received an email. It wasn't meant to be hidden. Claire had left her laptop open in the study. The screen lit up with a notification. A name. Julia Mercer. Ethan didn't recognize it at first, but something about it lingered. He walked past the desk, then stopped, turned back, and looked. The email was short, professional in tone, but personal in implication. I'm glad you got what you needed. That was it. No emotion, no explanation, but enough. Enough to confirm that whatever had happened during those 2 weeks was not unfinished. It was complete. Ethan closed the laptop, and in that moment, he understood something clearly for the first time. Claire hadn't gone back to relive the past. She had gone back to end it, completely, on her terms. And somehow, that realization shifted the power dynamic in their marriage. Because closure is not neutral. It creates clarity, and clarity changes behavior. That night, Ethan didn't mention the email. Instead, he asked Claire to sit with him. There was no anger in his voice. No accusation, just intention. I think we've been managing this marriage, he said, not actually living in it. Claire didn't interrupt, didn't defend herself. She listened, and that was new. We built something that works, Ethan continued. But I don't know if it's something we chose. Claire exhaled slowly. I didn't go back to him because I wanted him, she said. I went back because I didn't know if I had ever chosen you freely. The honesty landed harder than any betrayal could have. Because it wasn't about the past. It was about the foundation of everything they had built. And now? Ethan asked. Claire met his eyes. Now I know I did. That answer didn't fix anything. But it changed everything. Because it shifted the question from trust to intention. The weeks that followed were different. Not easier, not lighter, but more real. They began to speak in ways they hadn't before. About expectations, about fears, about the quiet compromises they had made without acknowledging them. There were uncomfortable conversations, moments where silence would have been easier, but they didn't choose silence anymore. And that was the real turning point. Not the trip, not the email, but the decision to stop maintaining appearances and start confronting reality. Still, not everything resolved cleanly. There were moments when Ethan would look at Claire and remember where she had been. There were moments when Claire would hesitate, unsure if her honesty had come too late. But neither of them walked away, because walking away would have been simpler, and simplicity had never been the problem. The real issue had always been avoidance. Months later, their life didn't look dramatically different from the outside. The same house, the same routines, the same social circle. But internally, everything had shifted. There was less control, less performance, and more awareness. One evening, as they sat on the patio overlooking the quiet streets of Greenwich, Claire spoke again. I think we were afraid of choosing each other, she said. Ethan considered that. Because choosing means you could have chosen differently, he replied. Claire nodded. And that's uncomfortable. Ethan looked at her, not with suspicion this time, but with something quieter, understanding. Second question for you. Do you think a relationship can truly survive something like this? Or does it just evolve into something else entirely? Because what Ethan and Claire had now was not the same marriage they started with. But it wasn't broken either. It was something more honest. And honesty, while uncomfortable, has a way of removing illusions that comfort can never touch. In the end, Ethan never asked for the details of those 2 weeks. And Claire never offered them. Not because they were hiding something, but because they both understood something important. The details would only satisfy curiosity, but they wouldn't change the truth. And the truth was this. Claire didn't come back because she had nowhere else to go. She came back because she finally knew where she wanted to be. And Ethan didn't accept her return because he was afraid to lose her. He accepted it because he was finally ready to see her clearly, without control, without assumptions, without illusion. And sometimes, that's the only way something real can begin.